All right, we're going to get started, everyone. So I want to thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Anaia Peddie. I am the SHARP Grants Consultant for Humanities DC. And today we are having a webinar on Sustaining the Humanities through the American Rescue Plan, SHARP Grant. And this is a frequently asked questions webinar. I'm going to ask that if you have any questions, that you can put them into the chat, and I will answer questions at the end. Thank you. So during today's agenda, I'll give a brief introduction. I'll go over the National Endowment for the Humanities, the American Rescue Plan, Act of 2021, Humanities DC, and who I am. Then we'll go over a brief description of the humanities, what they are, what are humanities organizations. I'll go over the SHARP grant, which will be the application, the grant information, like the grant period, reporting, application materials. I'll go over expenses, and then we'll have time for questions. So first, I want to acknowledge that this award is granted with funds from the National Endowment for the Humanities as part of the American Rescue Plan. Humanities DC is an affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. We are one of 56 such affiliates in the United States. And so the American Rescue Plan of 2020 is a supplement to the CARES Act of last year, where we are generously being provided additional funds to help prevent, prepare for, and respond to and recover from the coronavirus, specifically in the context of humanities organizations. And Humanities DC is a recipient of the ART funds, and we have created the SHARP grant funds out of that. Humanities DC was founded in 1980 and is an affiliate, as I said earlier, of the National Endowment for Arts. Our mission is to enrich the quality of life, foster intellectual stimulation, and promote cross-cultural understanding and appreciation of local history in all neighborhoods of the district through humanities programs and grants. And this is myself. My name is Anaia Peddie. I am a consultant with Humanities DC, specifically working on the SHARP grant. So I will be managing not only this portion of the application process, but the program. So you can, if you have questions or concerns during this process, feel free to reach out to me. My email is here. My email will also appear again at the end of the presentation. So the humanities. Specifically with this grant, we really wanted to focus on humanities organizations and those that really have an interest in that, and kind of in that conversation, wanting to be very, very clear about what is a humanities organization. And so these organizations have an explicit mission connected to the humanities with a track record of working in the humanities. And some examples of what a humanities organization might be: they can be cultural or ethnic organizations, history organizations, humanities museums. So that could be things based on linguistics, literature, philosophy, literature organizations, humanities education, media, journalism, and documentary organizations, libraries, archives, consortiums, alliances, and collections of the above named groups. And if you have questions about, maybe where your organization might fit into these kind of categories, this is not meant to be exhaustive. This is, just to give you an idea of what we are looking for. You can feel free to email me and we can have a discussion offline about, maybe where you consider your organization to be. So I also want to go over the SHARP grant. This is really exciting. I'm glad that so many of you all are here and wanting to participate. So the priority of the grant is to help organizations continue existing or plan public humanities programming by retaining staff and maintaining their financial obligations. We know that with everything that has happened with COVID-19 over the last almost 2 years, it has shifted the way that so many of us do business. And we wanted to focus specifically on providing general support to humanities organizations so that they can have their financial basis covered, so that you could turn your attention to the programming and the other services that you provide. The application period is September 3rd. So next Friday, the application will go live and it will close at 11:59 on October 11th. So you have about 6 weeks to get your materials together and apply. The application will be available through humanitiesdc.com. You can register for an account in our grants portal, and you'll be able to access the grant when it's live next Friday. And the grant period will be from November 16th, 2021 to November 16th, 2022. This will be a year-long grant period. And so what are we considering to be general operating support? So these funds are considered unrestricted. And so that means that you could use this for rent, administration, personnel, operating expenses, things like that. We're looking primarily to support kind of like the back house kind of operations, administrative things. So if you even need to bring on a consultant with this money, you could, or to hire other people, you can. However, there are some restrictions on how you can use this general operating funds, and this will be described a little bit later when I go over the expenses portion of the presentation. And so I wanted to discuss award amounts. So I also want to make clear based on this table that these award amounts or these organizations' budget is an average of the last 3 years. So that's specifically what we're looking for. And then in the column to your right where it says maximum available award amount, this is kind of the ceiling of awards that would award amounts that could be issued at these budget levels. So first we have, if your organization's budget is between 300,000 or lower, then the maximum award available is $20,000. Between 300 and $1 million, then the maximum available award is $30,000. Over $1 million, it's $40,000. And I do want to go over some eligibility requirements. So this this grant is available or you're eligible to apply for this grant, if you are a federally incorporated 501c3 nonprofit organization, that you're registered to do business in the district as either a domestic entity or a foreign entity, then you must be in compliance with the following agencies: DCRA, the Office of Tax and Revenue, the Department of Employment Services, and the United States Internal Revenue Service. You also must have a valid DUNS number. I would like to say that you, at the time of application, you may not have a DUNS number, but when you receive the award, you must have the funds available to actually or produce that information saying that you either applied or that you have purchased one. That you have one, Also, we'll look for clean hands, and that'll come from the Office of Tax and Revenue. So making sure that you're squared away and compliant in that area will be important. And it's also important that this organization serves residents, or the majority of the people that you serve through your organization are DC residents. And we also ask that you have a principal business office here in the District of Columbia, that you have to be in good standing with Humanities DC. And what that means is that you cannot be delinquent on any reporting requirements, site visits, or things like that. If you are unsure of your standing with Humanities DC, you may feel free to contact me and I can make an inquiry into that. Also, I do want to make clear that there are some applicants that are not going to be allowed to apply for these funds, and that includes private clubs, any organization that discriminates on the basis of race, gender, color, religion, or any class under the DC Human Rights Act, for-profit entities, political organizations, any organizations whose primary focus is the performing arts or visual arts. You can also go to the DC Commission of the Arts and Humanities for applicable funding opportunities. Organizations without any paid staff, universities, foreign governments, federal government entities, organizations receiving significant federal fundings, and District of Columbia government agencies. And this is what we're looking for in the proposal. So we'll look for a brief description of your central activities, specifically with an emphasis on what your typical humanities programming may be, an estimate of how much income you lost due to COVID-19, a description of your public humanities programming lost or threatened by COVID-19 pandemic or other impact that it has had on your organization, and an explanation of how you plan to continue or alter your programming, or a description of, alternative public humanities programming for the organization. Additionally, we'll want to know how you're going to use this money. We'll want to also know a little bit about your target demographic, your primary humanities discipline. So to go back to kind of what it is that you're doing that is humanities related. And we would also like to know, this is very specific to the district, but of the, residents served in Washington, D.C., we would like to know where these people, which wards they live in. And we'll also like a listing of key personnel whose position would be impacted by the grant award and their roles in the organization, a timeline for the expenditure of funds, a budget, and a budget narrative. The budget template will be provided online and Fondit, which is Humanities DC's grant application portal, and a detailed plan for complying with the relevant provisions of the American Disabilities Act. So making sure that you have some accessibility or an accessibility plan present, that would be really good for your proposal. Now I want to go over the expenses portion. So for this grant in particular, there's no matching requirement to participate. Fiscal sponsor arrangements are prohibited for this grant. And now I really want to take my time and go over allowable expenses. So to go back to the American Rescue Plan Act, these specific activities that you could expense have to be related to or about, preventing, preparing for, and responding to and recovering from the coronavirus. And so general operating expenses may include salary, consulting fees, rent, utility, information technology, or administrative fees. And that's pretty key because we know that some people, some organizations have had to shift the way that they interact with their primary audience or how they produce their humanities programming or just conduct business in general. And that has meant making technological advancements, whether that means telecommunications, Wi-Fi, computer, things like that. Those expenses are allowable. If you do, or if you should at any point, have a question about how you may be, what you may be wanting to use the grant money for, again, feel free to send me an email. We can discuss it to make sure that this is something that aligns with the use of the funds. And to go over a very brief, because I have a more exhaustive list, prohibited expenses include food and beverages, tuition and scholarships, debt reduction, regranting, funding to foreign or domestic governments or agencies. So unallowable expense. So from the National Endowment of the Humanities, organizations who are receiving subawards, which would be the SHARP grantees in this instance, there are a whole host of more exhaustive list of unallowable expenses. If you would like to see how they're defined, you can definitely take a look at the 2 CRF 200 subpart E, the cost principles, which is something that I believe the Office of Management and Budget puts together. I can provide that link to you if you would like to read it in your own time. But you cannot charge indirect costs and general operating support subawards. So you can't take an administrative fee of like 10% off the top or anything like that. So it also these expenses or what you might be trying to expense cannot overlap with any other pending or approved anything that you might be receiving federal funds to do. No competitive regranting, cancellation costs. Something to be mindful of is that this act was signed into legislation in the spring of this year. However, you cannot charge anything retroactively. So the expenses that you have would be, you couldn't charge any costs prior to March 15th of 2021. Now, this is also key again. Equipment costs, we can't allow equipment costs more than 20% of the total project budget. So also travel is unallowable, construction, environmental sustainability collections, any sort of preservation work. There can be no lobbying with these funds. Um, yeah, and any project that falls outside of the humanities or the humanistic social sciences. And so that would be the creation or performance of art, creative writing in particular, autobiographies, memoirs, creative nonfiction, and quantitative social science research or policy studies. So this can't be used to produce like a policy brief. Um, and just to let you all know a little bit more about kind of what we're looking for in terms of reporting. So during this the grant period, which will last about a year, you will be required to submit at least one programmatic report. That report will be made available to you in fondant, and also there will be a final report due. The final report will be due, excuse me, 30 days after the close of the grant period. So the grant period will close November 16th, 2022. The final report will be due December 16th, 2022. Oops, excuse me. I made a little bit of a mistake. Okay. So before we go into the questions portion, I'll put this back up again. I did want to say that, my name is Anaia Peddie. I'm a Sharp grants consultant. This is my email address. It's apeddy@humanitiesdc.org. I'll put that up again, but now I know I went through, shared a lot of information, but I want to give you all an opportunity to ask me some questions. And so if you have any questions, okay, you can put them in the chat box. Okay. So I have two questions. Will you be sharing the slides? The answer is, I believe, yes, because this will be recorded, so it will be standing content. And thank you, Amanda, for asking. She's saying, can the funds be used to cover salaries for development, communications, and operating instead of program staff? Yes, it can. So these funds can be used for staff people. I know that some people have had to reduce hours, or if someone was working part-time and you couldn't maybe during this time period afford that, you can also use these funds for that. Maybe increase hours, bring on part-time staff, things like that. Are there any other questions? Because I can share with you some things that I think are a little interesting about this opportunity too. I'm just gonna wait and see if anyone is percolating any thought. Yes, I can scroll back 2 slides. So just one moment. So we can go, I'm scrolling back. Oh, okay. So the unallowable expenses, and this is what was being requested to look more deeply at. These, I know there's a lot of them. I can, let me see. I can add this particular section to the landing page where we can have the where this can live so you can see it. Is there a specific question about unallowable expenses? Because I want to answer one more question about how the proposals will be assessed. I'm gonna. Okay, you're concerned about the last bullet. Okay, so we can talk about that. Now, oh, excuse me, I'm trying to move this. So the last bullet says projects that fall outside of the humanities and the humanistic social sciences, including the creation or performance of art, creative writing, autobiography. So before I get ahead of myself, within this last bullet, and also to actually, it's the last bullet on the right hand side or the left hand side. Because what I can tell you is that, so for instance, maybe you all are, let me go back and clarify this. So the general operating funds, the support, excuse me, the idea behind this is that, kind of taking some of the financial pressure off, whether it is rent, whether it is a consultant, whether it is staff, so that the organization can shift its attention to its projects and programs. So while these monies are not specifically for a project, we understand that using these resources for the general operating support, it's relational. These things are inextricably tied. Excuse me. So we know that that this will allow you to, for instance, if you were to hire someone to do fundraising and development, you could have that person fundraise for a project. And this project could, depending on your organization, it could include some of these things. Maybe there is a performance, maybe there is an element of creative writing that you are fundraising for, and you were able to do that through hiring someone because you got these funds. Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you. And now I want to answer, let me just make sure. So another question is, what are some of the criteria used to assess grant proposals? So some of the things that we'll be looking for are complete information in terms of how much detail you're providing, your background experience in the space, and what else would we be looking for? So I said, accuracy in terms of, is everything completed? Do we have a full sense of what you're providing? Not only in terms of the description of your activities and the budget narrative, are these things that are feasible? We'll also look at some of your, like those, making sure that you're in good standing. Those things will matter. So having the clean hands is really important. I know that sometimes that can be a little tricky with DCRA. So I would strongly encourage you all to go and just double check to make sure that you're clean hands, that you can have your clean hand certificate. And then also making sure that you're in good standing with Community CC will be really important. And also we are interested in organizations that that really are serving the district residents. That's really of key importance. That's to make sure that the majority of your constituents are DC residents. We really do want to have a good sense of where our money is going to the local community. So this is also another good question. Thank you, Amanda. So Amanda asks, she wanted to clarify, what would be ineligible. But this grant also covers, say, marketing or design funds where we would pay freelancers to work on projects. So yes, so if you wanted to, for instance, again, hire a consultant, a freelance marketing or design consultant for your organization, yes, that is something that we would support. The same would go for a development consultant or even a grants consultant like myself. Well, not grants in this instance because you can't read grant money. But yeah, consultant is definitely something that is an eligible expense or eligible for funding. And again, some of the thing that what our thinking was behind doing general operating support was just that we recognize that maybe there are some things in-house that, in the time that we're in, we're kind of dealing with a lot of uncertainty and a lot of aspects that, there are some things that maybe an organization has wanted to do, and some of it could be marketing and design. And maybe they haven't had the money to do that. And maybe you need to bring on someone to help you. That's exactly what this kind of funding is for. Are there any other questions? And like I said, feel free if you have any questions to write them in the chat. I'm gonna give everybody 2 more minutes, and then I'll also share in the chat my email address again too, and my phone number so you can call me. Okay, I'm gonna add my So if there, I think I waited. Are there any more questions? I just shared my email in the chat. I also do want to share that there will be another webinar next Tuesday at 1 p.m. It will, you don't see my email? Mm. Can everyone see my email in the chat? Oh. I can go to the slide and I'll have you copy it too. Thank you for that. Give me just 1 moment. Okay, everyone. I want to thank you so much for your time today. This has been really, really great. I'm glad that you all could attend. And also, like I said, feel free to give me, send me an email if you have any questions or concerns, and we can go over a lot of those unallowable expenses. Okay, with that, I'm going to end the session. And like I said, I want to thank you again for your time today. My name is Anaia Peddie.